The conference room went completely silent when Daniel Carter stood up and looked directly at the woman sitting at the head of the table. Hundreds of employees were watching, but Daniel no longer cared about the whispers, the judgment, or the consequences. For years, he had swallowed every insult, accepted every overlooked promotion, and worked late nights while raising his little daughter alone. But that morning, something inside him finally broke. The CEO had just announced that Daniel would not be promoted because, in her words, someone with your responsibilities isn't qualified to lead. Daniel took a slow breath, looked around the room, and calmly replied, "Then you won't be CEO anymore. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and never judging someone by their circumstances, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs encouragement, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. You never know whose life might be changed by a story like this." Daniel had joined Harrison Technologies 7 years earlier with nothing more than a worn-out suit, a determination to succeed, and a newborn daughter waiting for him at home. His wife had passed away shortly after their daughter, Lily, was born, leaving Daniel with a grief he rarely spoke about. He became a father and mother to Lily overnight, learning how to pack school lunches while preparing business presentations, attending parent-teacher meetings between client calls, and sometimes answering emails at 2 in the morning after Lily finally fell asleep. He never asked his co-workers for sympathy. He simply worked. When the company needed someone to stay late, Daniel stayed. When a major client threatened to leave, Daniel flew across the country on almost no notice. When a young employee made a mistake that could have cost the company millions, Daniel protected him instead of humiliating him, then stayed up all night helping him fix it. Slowly, Daniel became one of the most trusted people in the company, even though his name rarely appeared on the list of executives. His biggest obstacle was Victoria Harrison, the company's powerful CEO. Victoria was brilliant, ambitious, and feared by nearly everyone who worked beneath her. She believed leadership belonged to people who could dedicate every waking hour to the company. Daniel had watched her repeatedly pass him over for promotions, choosing younger employees who stayed in the office until midnight simply because they had fewer responsibilities outside work. Daniel never complained. He told himself that eventually his results would speak louder than anyone's assumptions. Then, after leading the company's most successful project in 5 years, he was finally certain that his time had come. The board had created a new executive position, and everyone knew Daniel was the strongest candidate. On the morning of the promotion meeting, Daniel walked into the conference room carrying a folder filled with performance reports, client testimonials, and financial results. He expected a difficult conversation, but he never expected humiliation. Victoria stood before the board and announced that another executive, a man with less experience and poorer results, would receive the promotion. Daniel sat still as the room applauded. Then Victoria looked at him and said that while his performance was impressive, leadership required complete availability. She reminded everyone that Daniel had a child at home and suggested that his personal responsibilities made him unsuitable for an executive role. Daniel felt something cold settle in his chest. It wasn't the rejection that hurt most. It was realizing that after 7 years of sacrifice, Victoria had never actually seen him as a person capable of leadership. She had only seen him as a single father with limitations. Daniel slowly closed his folder. He thought about Lily waiting at school that afternoon. He remembered how she had once asked him why he always looked tired, and he had smiled and told her that some dreams required patience. He thought about all the employees who had come to him when they were struggling, the people he had mentored, the clients who trusted him, and the teams that had succeeded because he refused to abandon them. Then he stood. Everyone expected him to accept the decision quietly. Instead, Daniel placed his folder on the table and said that he had spent 7 years proving he could lead without sacrificing the people he loved. Victoria coldly told him that if he believed he deserved the position, perhaps he should prove it somewhere else. Daniel looked directly at her and replied, "Maybe I will. But if I leave, I won't be leaving alone." The room became tense. Daniel opened his folder and revealed something the board had not yet seen. During the previous year, he had quietly developed a new strategy for the company after noticing that several major clients were considering leaving. His plan had already been tested with a small group of clients, and the results were extraordinary. Revenue had increased, customer retention had improved, and several major partners had asked for expanded contracts. Daniel explained that he had never presented the strategy because he believed it belonged to the company, not to him personally. But now he realized that Victoria had been making decisions based on assumptions instead of results. One board member asked why Victoria had never seen the report. Daniel answered quietly that he had sent it to her office 3 times. Victoria's expression changed. The board members began asking questions. Within minutes, they discovered that Daniel's proposal could potentially save the company millions. But the biggest revelation came when the board's chairman explained that several senior executives had privately complained about Victoria's leadership style. Employee turnover had risen, talented managers were leaving, and major clients were losing confidence. Daniel's refusal to retaliate against people, his ability to build loyal teams, and his understanding of both employees and customers suddenly looked very different. What Victoria had called weakness was actually leadership. The chairman turned toward Victoria and asked why she had ignored Daniel's work. She tried to defend herself, but the evidence was overwhelming. The board called for an emergency vote. Daniel stood quietly near the window, watching the city outside. He didn't feel victorious. He only felt exhausted. He had spent years trying to prove that being a single father did not make him less capable. Now he realized he should never have needed to prove it in the first place. After the vote, the chairman approached Daniel and offered him the executive position Victoria had denied him. Daniel accepted, but only after asking for one condition: employees would never again be judged by their family responsibilities. Parents, caregivers, and people facing difficult circumstances would be evaluated by their character, performance, and potential. The board agreed. That evening, Daniel returned home earlier than usual. Lily ran toward him, wrapped her arms around his waist, and asked if something good had happened. Daniel smiled through tears and told her that sometimes people may tell you that your responsibilities make you weak, but the people you love can actually become the reason you become stronger. Lily looked up at him and said, "So you won?" Daniel knelt beside her and answered, "No, sweetheart. We did." And that was the moment Daniel understood that his greatest achievement had never been becoming an executive. It had been showing his daughter that kindness could survive pressure, that dignity mattered more than pride, and that being underestimated did not mean being defeated. Sometimes the person standing quietly in the corner is carrying the heaviest burden and still choosing to help everyone else. Sometimes the person everyone overlooks is the very person capable of saving the room. If this story touched your heart, please don't just watch and leave. Like the video, share it with someone who needs a reminder that their circumstances do not define their worth, and subscribe for more stories about courage, kindness, and second chances. Before you go, comment, "Kindness is strength," if you believe people should be judged by their character and actions, not by their struggles or responsibilities. Because Daniel didn't become a leader when he received the promotion. He became a leader years earlier, every time he chose patience over anger, kindness over humiliation, and responsibility over excuses. And sometimes, the greatest victory isn't proving someone wrong. It's becoming the person they never believed you could be.